So welcome. Thank you very much for being here. And to our American and English friends, we were expecting two gentlemen named Laurence on stage. Don't be surprised, this is the right session. Laurence was actually the most in-demand girl first name in France in the 70s. And there is now a talent pool of 170,000 Laurence in France. So this is actually a very small sample. And so this is my great pleasure to introduce you to Laurence Rava. Laurence is the senior HR business partner at OECD. And I'm also very pleased to be with you this afternoon. My name is Laurence Bredstern, and I head up marketing for LinkedIn Talent Solution in EMEA. So today, we're going to discuss about data, how you can measure your impact thanks to data. And so we call this presentation, Stop Guessing, Start Going. And why did we do that? Because over the last couple of days, you've heard many times that talent, HR, is at the heart of the company's success. And when you know that salary and wages represents up to 50% of a company cost, you wouldn't be surprised to hear that 79% of HR leaders report to CEOs. Yet, only 38% of them are involved in the company's strategic planning. This is a shocking statistics. It means that we have a 50% loss. And why is that? Because to get a seat at the table, you need to bring hard facts and numbers. And talent leaders, HR leaders, have been relying too often on their intuition and their experience. So today, we're going to help you take this journey, the journey that Robert took, at Vitlox, and he had a fantastic story to tell this morning, to get that seat at the table. And we will be successful if we achieve three things. First, we want to convince you of the importance of data in decision-making. And I think that the fact that you are like so many in that room demonstrates that it's a pretty easy bet. Second, we would like you to be inspired and learn from the experience of modern marketing, data-driven marketing at LinkedIn, and modern recruiting, data-driven recruiting at OECD. And then, we want you to take away 5 tips so you can put everything in practice and start your data strategy tomorrow when you go back at the office, hopefully if you don't have a hangover from tonight's party. So it starts with a shift of mindset. But first, I want to step back and explain why measuring your actions is so important. Imagine that you have to take a long journey and that you drive a car with no meter, no fuel meter, no speed meter. You cannot control what you don't measure. And measuring is very important for planning. It's very important for prioritization. It's also very important to be able to measure and control, to anticipate, and make the decisions in timely manner. It's also very important to be able to, bring those hard numbers and facts to be seen as a stable and trustable partner. You also have to showcase your contribution, like with those hard facts and numbers, to prove that this contribution is essential to the business, and that will get that seat at the table, that will improve your credibility. So as I said, it starts with a shift of mindset. And you have to think that actually it's not about what you think, but it is about what you know. And that takes 3 steps. First, you have to ask yourself what happened. Basically, you have to track what happened. Then you have to understand why this happened. This is the analyzing part. And then you have to forecast if it will happen again. Marketing has gone through this journey, and this is what I'm going to share with you in some moments, some minutes. And I can tell you that data has had a material impact in the way we understand the needs and we forecast the needs and the behavior of our customers, especially in B2B. And thanks to that, we're able to showcase our contribution to the business and also to forecast that contribution to the business. This is probably why our CEO, Jeff Winner, said that the word best recruiters should think like the word best marketers. And so let me share with you some highlights on this journey with LinkedIn. So I've been in marketing for 20 years, and so I've seen like all kinds of marketing. When I was at university, marketing was about the 4 Ps: price, product, place, promotion. Probably the equivalent of what you call post and pray. You know, it was very traditional, very academic. It was marketing art. Then came internet and email. Fantastic invention, email. So we started to spam the world. You know, send millions of emails to create lead. So that's why we called it lead generation. And surprisingly, the sales team were not so happy with those leads. They say, no, this is not really quality leads, and they wouldn't work on it. And it actually created a divide between marketing and sales. A few years ago, we managed to reduce this gap thanks to what we call demand generation. And so you see the shift from lead to demand generation. We took like a more customer-centric approach, more holistic, and we say, okay, like we have to map our marketing strategy to the life cycle. And this was really about like communicating the right information to the right people at the right time on the right channel. And we were able to do that thanks to integration with CRM, something that you could do with your ATS. Thanks to content marketing, inbound marketing, digital marketing. But that was not enough. And now we're like taking one step further toward revenue marketing. And here the word revenue is very important because it demonstrates that we have shifted from a transactional support function to a real business contributor. And the difference between revenue marketing and demand gen marketing is about scalability, repeatability, and predictability. And again, like we were enabled thanks to new tools, marketing automation, machine learning, to really create like, marketing cycles and, learn from what we were seeing and being better at what we do. So again, to come back to those 3 steps I described before, it started with tracking. So the first question you have to ask yourself is, what happened? And you have to move from right to left. What I mean is that too often we think like, what is the what? And we should think of what is the why. There is a fantastic presentation on TED called The Golden Circle that explains that this mindset. And so what we do at LinkedIn, for instance, is that we differentiate KPIs, key performance indicators, from metrics. KPIs, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. They measure your performance. So what is the goal you want to achieve? In my case, my goal is to generate additional revenue for LinkedIn. I'm here to support the business. I'm actually not here to support the sales. I'm here to support the business. And I'm going to be measured against dollars originating from marketing and the percentage of contribution of marketing out of the total sales. Metrics are here to help you steering your activity. To come back to the image of the car, it's your speed meter, it's your fuel meter. And in my case, it's going to be pretty traditional. I'm going to look at conversion rates. I'm going to look at seniority of the contact. I'm going to look at the number of interactions. Of course, you have to be realistic when you collect those information. They have to be trackable and they have to be storable. The next stage is to understand why this happened. And I took this cute visual because it takes baby steps. When an infant is born, he or she can only see very simple shapes, and they can only hear sounds. And it takes, weeks, months, years to combine those signals, those shapes, those sounds into words, into faces, into patterns. It's the same with data analytics. You have to start little, but you have to think big and scale fast. So again, like I mentioned, like those metrics we started to track, conversion rates, interactions, seniority, and it was very basic at the beginning. But then we were able to combine those different signals into a more sophisticated analysis. And we came back with an account influence score that measure the influence of marketing, based on the seniority, based on what we call the size of the price, so the potential of the account, based on the number of interactions, based on the quality of those interactions. Like, for instance, a web visit won't count as your presence at Talent Connect. And so we were able to measure precisely and showcase precisely our contribution to the business. But this isn't it. Like, the third stage is really about forecasting. And forecasting is really the epiphany of revenue marketing. So we looked at the patterns, we looked at the historical data, and we saw that there were like some repetitive things happening. For instance, I'm measured against my contribution to the business every quarter. And actually, I measure that every week. And I was able to see that based on my conversion rate on a certain day, based on the pipeline, of opportunities of leads, but also based on the run rate. So like, where are we against our target, against our plan on a certain day in the quarter, I could tell precisely if I was able to meet my plan or if I will overachieve my plan. We started to do that in February last year, actually this year. And since then, we've always been at more than 95% accuracy in our forecast. So needless to say that it completely changed the relationship with the business stakeholders and really, really improve our credibility. It seems to be rocket science, but believe me, it is not. I'm not a very analytical person. And what happened in marketing is actually going to happen, or is happening already, in the talent industry. And so now I'm going to hand over to Laurence, and I'm going to take the clicker, because this is a cooperation. And she's going to describe her experience at OECD.
Thank you very much, Laurence, and thank you everybody for being here. I'm actually very happy to be here in front of you and sharing my story. So I'm a senior HR business partner working at the OECD. In that capacity, some of my role is to recruit talents for the organization, and I've been doing that for the past 6 years. Prior to that, I was working in another industry doing the same thing. I was working in the non-profit sector. And prior to that, I was working in marketing.
Hence.
Like
this perfect couple.
So in 2012, I introduced LinkedIn to the OECD in a pilot project. In 2013, we scaled it up and started using LinkedIn for the whole organization. We are now at the end of 2014, so we have 2 years of experience of using LinkedIn and also 2 years of data. And what I would like to do today, if I manage that, I'll be very happy, is to keep things very simple. So we're talking about data, but I'm not going to knock you on the head with spreadsheets and Excel and all of that. I just want to pass on some very simple messages and walk you through what would happen, what happened to us in the first 2 years of using social media for recruitment. And if you are in this type of seat, what are some actionable points that you could take on? So I'm going to walk you through the 4 steps of our strategy. The first one was building a stronger employer brand. The second one was developing a community. The third one, engaging with the followers. And the fourth one, recruiting new talents. Building a stronger employer brand. Well, at the OECD, we're pretty good at what we're doing. Actually, yesterday we were in the front page of the Financial Times for a report we just issued on the future of the energy in the world. And our top leader, the Secretary General of the OECD, Mr. Gurria, is traveling around the world. He's probably one of the most dynamic and active leaders in the world. He's kind of hard to follow around the planet. And he's advising presidents of governments and leaders in the world on what will happen, how to improve the policies of the member countries that we're made of. So we think we're top of the class in what we do, and that our brand is pretty strong. However, our employer brand is kind of sitting in the shadow of that. So, and we're a knowledge organization. So basically, our talent is our asset. We don't have any products. And so what are some of the challenges that we're facing to attract and retain talent? So now I'm going to shift it forward. I'd like you to sit in my shoes. So I'm going to share with you some of the challenges that we're facing. And there's 5 of them. Number 1, we're growing. So there's 3,000 employees currently at the OECD. Last year alone, we recruited over 200 people. Number 2, the types of profiles that we're looking for are mainly graduates, master's degree, but now more and more PhDs, people with a lot of experience. Well, we're recruiting junior, but we're also recruiting middle professionals, and we're also recruiting senior professionals. Actually, we're one of the rare international organizations recruiting people over 60 years old, and we're pretty proud of that. So these profiles are in high demand. Number 3, we're recruiting over a very wide range of expertise. So it goes from energy, I talked about it, education, taxation, macroeconomics, finance, environment, health, employment, you name it. So we, as recruiters, have to know all these different job markets, and that's quite challenging. Number 4, we have to know all these different job markets globally, because we're made out of 34 member countries, and even though we don't have any quotas on nationalities, we recruit solely on merit. Basically, we want to have a representativeness of these 34 member countries in our organization. And number 5, our headquarters is in Paris. You might think, what sort of a challenge is that? That's one of the most attractive countries to live in the world. But if you put all of that together, it means we need to bring a lot of talents to Paris, and these people are coming with their families and their kids, and that makes us an employer with 60%, over 60% of expatriates. So that's a challenge. So that's where we're standing in terms of our employer brand, the types of challenges that we're facing. So where did we start with the employer brand? Well, we started by building a career page on LinkedIn. And on this career page, when we were in the process of building this career page, we asked ourselves, who are we as an employer? What is our value proposition? What makes us attractive as an employer? And how can we differentiate ourselves from the competition? So we tried to face these questions and see how we could display some of these answers for our potential candidates out there. And I also want to share that this was a collaborative process with our communication department, but that the employer page was built by the HR department, by my team. And that's a challenge also, because that means our job as HR professionals is changing. And I think you've heard that over the past 2 days. So now we need to be in social media, and we need to know what's happening out there. So what happened? Well, we reached 50,000 followers 2 weeks ago. Timely for this presentation, right? It would have looked different if it had been 49,000 up there. So we're pretty proud of that. And what was the progression in our followers? Now we're going into the data, so don't leave the room. We went from 9,000 followers at the beginning of 2013 to 50,000 followers in November of this year. So that's a 5-fold increase in our number of followers. And as you can see, represented by this nice blue line, well, that's the result of a strategy that we've put together, and the strategy is working. And basically, if we continue applying this formula, I can predict where we're going to be in 2015, in 2016, if I continue with the same strategy. Obviously, we're going to try to do better than that. But that's basically the type of data that you can track and apply. But it's not just about the number of followers. It's about developing a community. And what we really wanted to do is two things. First, as we're recruiting mainly economists, we wanted to be appealing to economists. So we wanted to target economists in our talent pool. And second, as I mentioned, we identified some underrepresented countries in our workforce, and we wanted to proactively target these underrepresented countries to try to find economists in these countries. So I want to pause here and talk for a minute about diversity, because that's also something that I've heard quite a lot through some of the presentations, and tell you what diversity means at the OECD very briefly, and how we measure it, basically. Well, we're looking at 3 dimensions for diversity. Gender diversity. Of course, like a lot of your organizations, we're facing the challenge of finding middle managers, women middle managers, and women senior managers. That's a fact. The second dimension is nationality, which I mentioned, and that's something that's very specific to the OECD, I know, but that's what we have to do. And the third one is diversity of profiles. And that's something that's quite new, and that we started measuring when we started using LinkedIn. The challenge that we're facing is that our organization is going through major transformation. You've heard that before. And we are having people have to work on projects that are more and more complex. Because the economy is more and more complex. So you can't just study the environment. You have to study the environment and the energy and trade and economics. So we want people who can work together in multicultural, multidisciplinary teams, horizontally. And so we need to look for different types of profiles. We need to look for more experts, but we also need to look for new types of skills, people who can work transversally in the organization. So, what did we do? We launched a campaign on LinkedIn targeting economists in some of our underrepresented countries in our workforce, like Chile and like Japan or like Turkey. And anytime a member from our target group would log into LinkedIn, like Barbara, she would see on the right of her profile a little insert that would say, follow the OECD. And as you know, you can follow metrics with LinkedIn. So we run these campaigns 2 years in a row, in 2013 and in 2014. And you can see here some of the results. Pretty good in terms of impression and pretty good also in terms of click-through rate. That's about, what, Laurence, 10 times, 15 times the industry standard, something like that. So what were the results of this campaign, and specifically for Chile? We were able to increase our number of followers in Chile by 2,000. And Chile became one of the fastest growing countries in terms of number of followers in our follower base. So that might not mean a lot to you, but to us it means quite a lot. Because these people are very pertinent to us. Remember, they're economists working in Chile. Now, you might ask me, did we know these people before? I don't know. Do we have jobs for these people right now? Maybe. But what's important, like Dave was saying yesterday, is really that now we're having a congruence of different types of experiences. And the fact that these people are following the OECD increases the chances that if there's a job that is of interest to them, they would apply. So, in a sense, mission accomplished. The next step in our strategy is to engage with our followers. And that's very important, and I really want to emphasize that if you're going on this journey, that's something that you have to do. Building a career page is really the beginning. And I like to take this image. If you have a very nice career page and you don't have any content regularly posted, it's like you have a very nice window of your shop and there's nothing inside. So it's a sort of a proposition that is unfulfilled. And as we've talked about that for the past 2 days, the people out there, they're becoming more and more acute, and they know. I think there was one of the presenters who talked about the BS factor. They know what you're talking about. So you can't put all your energy on building a career page and then stopping there. You have to build content, and it's really about content, content, and content again, and not just any type of content. So we worked on building an editorial line. And so we worked on building an editorial line, asking ourselves, what sort of image of our organization do we want to give, and who are the people we want to target? Sounds familiar, right, Laurence? Isn't that what marketing is about? Kind of, okay. So, and then here I'm going to be a little daring. I think LinkedIn talks about 3 types of content. The content that talks about your organization, corporate content, what you do, then the content that talks about HR, who you are as an employer, and the 3rd type of content is the jobs, the opportunities that you have. Well, we purposefully decided to scrap the 3rd type of content. So if you go on the OECD LinkedIn page, you're not going to have any post on specific opportunities going on right now, because for us, it's about communicating about who we are and what we do. So we have these 2 types of contents. As you can see, you can track metrics again, post by post, in terms of impressions and in terms of engagement. Engagement is the number of people that actually click. Either they share, or they like, or they comment on the post that you're putting. So what happened in terms of results? 2 things that I wanted to leave you with. The little graph on the left is about the frequency of the content that we put on our career page, on our corporate page. And as you can see, it's been constant for the past year, and it's about 100 posts per quarter. So if you translate that in working days, it's 1 to 3 posts per day. And these are posts that are very specific about some of the reports that we put out, some of the statistics, some of the visits, some of the advice that we give to world leaders. And the HR content is about who we are as an employer. And we have 2 types of content. One is about recruitment. We're recruiting, just to inform people that the OECD is recruiting. And the 2nd type of content, we've created this line called Did You Know? So I'm just going to ask you, did you know? Did you know that you can work at the OECD without speaking French? We're based in Paris, but we're a bilingual organization, and you can very well have a career, arrive and not speak a word of French. We'll walk you through an intensive French class, and you can interact with your colleagues in English. Did you know that if you work at the OECD, you can influence policies of governments in the world? Pretty exciting, right, for a young graduate. 3rd, did you know that if you work at the OECD, your salary is going to be tax-free? Yes. We don't pay any taxes. So we have things to say as an employer. So that was for content and for HR versus corporate content. And that's our formula right now. It's 10% HR content, 90% corporate. We're working on that. We're working on increasing the HR content. We're not there yet. Now, for the right part of the graph, what is that telling you? 2 things. The first one is that, as you can see, HR content is consistently leading to double or triple the engagement compared to corporate content. And that's pretty good news too. That means that our followers, more likely than not, are interested in working for us. And the 2nd point is that if you put in parallel these engagement graphs, the 2 of them, the blue and the purple, with what I showed you before on the increase in the followers, and for that period, Q4 2013 to Q3 2014, we went from 20,000 to 50,000 followers. So we more than doubled the number of followers, yet we managed to keep the engagement at the same level. And that's very important, and that's really maybe one of the key points I want to make to you. Increasing your followers doesn't mean much if these people are not relevant to you, right? So what you want to do is you want to increase your followers while keeping your engagement stable, or even better, increasing your engagement. So I know it's about data, and here in the page it says it's all about people. So ultimately I'm in HR, so even though I'm talking about data, for us it's all about people. But what I want to talk to you right now is information. If you start working on recruitment in social media, you need to engage. And that means that it's a two-way process. It's not just you posting stuff out there. You're going to post things, and people are going to respond to it. That's a fact. And that sounds very obvious, but as I was saying, because this page is owned by the HR team, that meant that we had to become community managers and figure out what do you do? What do you do when somebody is posting something? And, well, you can use this information because that's going to tell you something about you, and that's going to tell you something about your employer brand because that's your image out there. So I'm sharing with you here a not so rosy piece of post that we had. We posted something very standard, very basic on recruitment at the OECD. And we got a response on the fact that basically some candidates were not getting response. And so two things you can do when this sort of things happen. Negative sort of feedback on your HR processes. First one is you can do nothing. Forget about it. Wait for it to drop down, the post, and it will at some point, and wait for it to disappear. Well, is that really disappearing? I'm asking you. Not really. The problem is still there. Second thing you can do is actually face the reality that there's something going on out there. And maybe that's a piece of information, that's feedback that you can act on. And so that's what we did. So we took this feedback. First of all, we faced the reality, and we acknowledged there was a problem, and we apologized to these people. Because negative news on social media spread a lot faster than positive news. So if you don't do something about this, this is just going to get bigger. People are going to talk about this experience to others, and that's just going to snowball. The second thing we did is we said, okay, let's look at our HR processes and let's look what led to this. And we realized that we had just decentralized the way we respond to applications from a central HR to hiring managers. And what happened is they're dealing differently with this information. So we launched an internal campaign to basically explain to hiring manager the importance of sending reject emails to people that have not gone through the process and have not been selected. And we're changing that. The last thing I wanted to talk about in terms of engagement is the Talent Brand Index. And this has been presented in quite a few presentations today and yesterday. So I'm not going to go too much into the definition, but this is the Talent Brand Index of the OECD. So it's a ratio of your engagement on your reach. The talent that is interested in you as an employer over the talent that's familiar with you as an employer. And it's interesting to look at it, from my perspective, on at least two dimensions. The first one is to look at it over time. And if you look at the Talent Brand Index of the OECD, since we started putting in place this strategy on LinkedIn, we went from 4% in 2012 to 17% this quarter. So that's more than a 400% increase. And again, you can see that there is a trend going on there. The second dimension, which is also quite interesting, is to look at your Talent Brand Index and comparing it with your competitors. So here you have represented in the 9 gray bars, the 9 biggest international organizations present on LinkedIn. And the little blue, tiny one at 4% was the OECD in 2012. We were the weakest employer brand in LinkedIn. Nothing to be proud of. 2 years later, we're the strongest one. We think we can do better, but we're pretty proud of that too. The last step in our recruitment strategy that I want to talk to you about is recruiting new talents. And here, I'm going to walk you through also some very simple metrics that we're using for our recruitment through LinkedIn, well, when we're recruiting and posting jobs on LinkedIn. So I'll share with you an example of a recruitment and also what the process was. I was working on this one, so I know it quite well. So when this process was, when I worked with this hiring manager, his name is François, he works in Paris. So François in Paris was looking for a sales and marketing manager sitting in our Tokyo office. I was saying 95% of the staff is in Paris, 5% in offices like Tokyo. And François was telling me that the post incumbent was retiring after 20 years at the OECD. François was looking for a new type of profile. He wanted a sales and marketing manager who was based in Japan, speaking Japanese, excellent English, knowledge of Asia, possibly another language like Chinese, very good at publishing and possibly electronic publishing. And also, because we're producing economics products, he wanted somebody who had an economics background. I was like, okay. Then so we sat in this meeting, and he told me, well, Laurence, so you got everything you need? And I said, wait a minute. We're going to do it differently this time. So I sat down with him, and we ran a LinkedIn search together, sitting next to each other. And I went through the filters and ended up with 80 profiles. People in Japan with some of these basics that he was asking for, not all of it, but some of it. And I sent him the 80 profiles. He came back a week later and he said, okay, 28 of these profiles interest me. I said, cool. So I sent 28 emails. And I had a response rate of 75%. So 75% of these 28 people that we had identified together responded to me and said, I'm honored to hear about the OECD. I didn't know you were recruiting in Japan. Yes, I'm interested. And then 50% actually applied to the job. So to me, that's an example of a pretty successful work between HR and hiring managers. And we've heard about that also today. And here, I'm sharing with you also the recruiting funnel for this specific job. And I could spend 2 hours talking just about this slide, but I'm not going to do that. What's important about this slide is a couple of things. First one, as you can see, you have two different sources of data, LinkedIn and our ATS, or Twilight Zone, Taleo. And you can see the evolution of the candidates or potential candidates through the funnel to the point of the person being hired. The second point that's important is that we're doing this for every single job that we're posting on LinkedIn. So we have now a database of 2 years of jobs and of job characteristics, which allows us to create typologies of jobs. Of course, they don't all work super well like this one. Sometimes we have successes, sometimes we have failure, but we can characterize these jobs and create typologies. And with our internal knowledge that we're creating in the HR department and these typologies of jobs, we can predict what will happen if a similar job is posted and what sort of behavior we're going to have, right? Haha moment. So that's important because we can use this data to plan the future. And the third point, which is also, I think, very important, is that it's not all about numbers and volumes. When we started working with LinkedIn, we didn't want to have thousands of applicants going through LinkedIn. We wanted to have quality applicants applying. So this is why here on this slide you can see we're measuring the views and the clicks and the applications, but more importantly, we're measuring the percentage of LinkedIn applicants in every step of our process. And our objective is to have a quality of applicant coming from LinkedIn at least as good as the other sources, and possibly better. So in the end, we recruited Atsushi, who's now working with us, and we're very pleased. And that's the type of experience that we're having when we're posting jobs on LinkedIn, and when it works. Now, I was talking about data, and here you see two types of data, LinkedIn and Taleo. Well, that wasn't enough for the OECD, because we're a data organization, as you can imagine. So we started creating our own data. So we started doing surveys to understand a little better what was going on out there. So we did a survey of our top applicants. These are top applicants coming through LinkedIn. These were people interviewed that were identified in 2013. And we asked these people a series of questions, like Atsushi. And Atsushi, for example, told me, well, if you hadn't sent me that email, I wouldn't have known about the OECD. He wasn't in our network. Others were. But we asked them, where did you see this opportunity that you applied for in LinkedIn? What is the source within LinkedIn of your knowledge of this job? And free sources, we classified them in free sources. The first one is emails. That's when your recruiters actually proactively target candidates. The second one is job views. And that's pretty simple. That's you're putting a job on your page, or the LinkedIn search engine is identifying your job and putting it through its algorithm and putting it out there. And the third one is job shared. And that was a big moment for us when we looked at these statistics. We thought, wow, 46% of our top applicants saw our job through their network, 31%, and via groups they belong to, 15%. We got to do more of that. So now we're changing our strategy based on this data, and we're specifically targeting hiring managers and discussing with hiring managers on how they can leverage their networks in LinkedIn to help us circulate the jobs better, because they have the networks, we HR professionals, less so. So I wanted to finish with this slide, which is OECD staff, because ultimately we use LinkedIn to improve our recruitment practices. And we're looking for new skills in numerous areas of work. And what we really want to do is bring talent to our organization. And as you know, if you're a recruiter, every single person you recruit makes a difference. And as I was mentioning, data is in our DNA. So in a sense, I'm lucky, because I can have these conversations about data with the senior partners that I'm talking to. But if I manage to inspire you to start the journey, as Laurence was saying, with baby steps, not being afraid of data, then I think I've achieved what I wanted to achieve today.
Thank you, Laurence. Earlier today, I promised you 5 tips to take away and start your data strategy from tomorrow. So here we go. So the first thing, again, is really to think from right to left and define your goals. You need to understand what you are trying to achieve and focus on this. Then you need to build a data acquisition plan and be realistic. Start small and make sure that the data you want to collect are collectible and also storable. You need to find a repository, something that everybody can share and work on. It's better to have dedicated resource, unless you're a very lucky person with, like, data analyst, recruiting, marketing capabilities. Usually, I mean, this is not something we're used to doing. And so I love, the scrappy approach of Robert this morning, hiring like a student to help him one day a week to crunch data. So if you can find a way to hire a business analyst, it really helps. Then you have to test and learn. So like, don't be ambitious, or you can be ambitious, but longer term. Like, you have to start small and then you will scale. But you have to prove, you have to test and learn. It's a very lean and iterative process. And the last one is over-communicate. I mean, you shifting to a data-driven approach must not be the best-kept secret. Otherwise, what's the point? Because in the end, what you want to achieve is to get a seat at the table. So over-communicate on the fact that you're like, embracing data, over-communicate on what you see on your marketing contribution, over-communicate on what you can bring to the business on your forecast. And believe me, it changed completely the paradigm of your function, moving from a transactional support function to a business stakeholder, a business contributor. It worked for my team, and I think that you want to share something with us that demonstrates that it worked pretty well for you as well.
Yeah, what I wanted to share was that on top of reaching 50,000 followers last month, we were also nominated at the OECD for the Innovation Award, which is a corporate award. So we don't know if we've won it yet, but for this approach that I've just described to you, but also for the way we're working. So this is the LinkedIn team at the OECD. And these people are not working full-time on LinkedIn, let's be honest. So this is probably 5% of our time. And nothing that I've shown you would have happened without them and without their energy and their dedication. And we're built into 3 different areas of expertise. So you have Anna, Sam, and Loïc who are working on data. You have Gemma and Audrey working on communication. And you have Agathe and Owen and Alison working on content. So everything I've been describing to you is actually thanks to this team and to the way we're working together. So, and I know they're watching, so I want to thank them. Thank you.
So, thank you very much. I think that we have some time for questions. I don't know if there is a mic somewhere in the room, but we have still, 10 minutes to go. So if anyone has questions, we will be pleased to answer them. Don't be shy. Yeah, we have one there.
Wondering, could you share a little bit more details on your campaign for Chile, and also how specific was it for Chile, or was it more like a global campaign? And also, apart from that, how do you ensure that the people you engage with are relevant for your business? Because that's very interesting. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, there are different things you can do with LinkedIn, but what we did was an advertising campaign. So you can target specific locations in the world. So we looked at our workforce, and we targeted Chile and other countries. I think there were 8 in total. And then we looked at job functions and keywords, and we targeted the keyword economist. I think it was in the job title. And so that's how we made sure that we were targeting economists in Chile and in Turkey and in Japan and in these other countries. And your second question is, how do we make sure they're relevant to us? Well, that's actually a good question. We think they're relevant to us because they are economists, and we are the market leader, I would say the market leader, in producing economic analysis in the world. They might not be relevant to us in the end if they're economists working in completely minute areas that we don't cover. And so that's why also we wanted to do some survey of our followers also. So we need to track more of that data to figure out how relevant they are to us. But one measure of the relevance is actually the engagement that I talked about.
And you share, when we were preparing this presentation, you shared like a survey where we looked at the profile of the top applicants, and you found like some interesting data around like what gender, what kind of function.
Yeah, we also looked at how different of a profile are these top applicants applying for LinkedIn. And we found out that 62% of them, if we do a qualitative analysis of looking at the jobs that we have and the types of profiles we normally get, and then looking at the jobs that we posted in LinkedIn, and the LinkedIn applicants, 62% of them had a different sort of profile. For example, they were coming more from the private sector than the public sector. And so that was interesting for us because, again, I was talking about diversity. It's about bringing different types of profiles. It's easy to find the same people than the one you currently have. If you're in if you're in a transformation phase, you might want to look at different sorts of profiles too. So that I'm just opening up this door for you.
Any other question? We have one there. I don't know if you can come to the mic, please.
Yes, hello. My name is Carol Fromage-Duforet. I work at the European Commission. I'm in charge of LinkedIn. We also have different networks, and I'm sure you're also present on other social media. So I'd like to know how you integrate the other social media platforms in your communication on recruiting.
That's a very good question.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
It's fine.
We have a specificity, I would say, at the OECD, which is that our communication department, starting presence in mainly in Facebook and Twitter, but other social media, putting only content, corporate content, no HR content. And then when we started embarking on LinkedIn, we contacted them and said, hey, why don't we work together? So we made this deal, which is that they own the corporate content and we own the HR content, and we just spread the content over the different platforms. So that's how we're progressively making sure that we're going to have more and more HR content in the other social media. But because we have such limited resources, because it's 9 people on this photo, but it's less than half a full-time job equivalent when you look at the time we spend on this, we had to start by focusing on LinkedIn, scaling up there, and then now we're going to slowly move away. But there's different sorts of profiles that we have on Facebook and on LinkedIn, and our challenge is to post jobs that are hard to fill. We don't have any problems recruiting young professionals. To give you an idea, every 2 years we run a young professional campaign. Last time we ran it, we had 6,000 applicants for 14 jobs. So that's not a problem for us to find young talents. And the statistics are showing that for the OECD, the younger talent is on Facebook and the more experience on LinkedIn. So because on LinkedIn we were recruiting medium and senior professionals, we wanted to spend our efforts there on the hard-to-find types of profiles.
Thank you. Unless we have one last question.
Hi, my name is Anne Dovey. I actually work for LinkedIn, but I find this fascinating. A lot of our clients are actually going through a very similar experience as you are at the moment. Have you found, since you've done this, that it's changed your perception within the business or the business perception of what you do?
You mean the people I'm talking to within the organization?
The value that you bring to the business, is that changing? I mean, obviously you've been put up for an innovation award, but yeah. Is the business seeing you in a slightly different light because of the innovation that you're doing?
I hope so. I have to ask them. No, I think it's a slow process, and we were talking about change within organizations. And the OECD is over 50 years old, so it's an older organization. And I think also you have to take into account that to show results in recruitment, you need time. And our recruitment process is pretty long. So having started working on LinkedIn really actively early 2013, even though it's been almost 2 years, we don't have a lot of distance in terms of the people we're recruiting. For example, we're talking about quality, measuring the quality of hire. You need these people to stay in the organization for quite a while before you can do that. So we're still at the infancy of that. And I think it's through data and measurement that we're going to be able to prove that. But for us, it's like you were talking about baby steps, Laurence. It's very much the first 2 years is making baby steps, trial and error, trying things. And as I was saying, some jobs it works, others it doesn't. So we need to be pretty humble about that too. Yeah.
Thank you again. I think that you earned back 6 minutes. And we were very pleased to be in front of you today.
Thank you.